I know why you're here. You come seeking knowledge. Knowledge of ChrisChan. Knowledge of Sonichu, and knowledge of the fabled dimensional merge. I have the answers you seek, but be warned, traveler. The knowledge of Sonichu lore contained in this very video will make you lose both your mind and your soul. In a world of hundreds of videos summarizing ChrisChan's life, copying verbatim from the quickie, and covering the exact same 5 events over and over again, there seems to be none that explain the world of just Sonichu. So stick around, you'll probably learn more about Chris here than on 99% of these other videos. And with that, let us begin. In the beginning, God, who is a woman, created the earth, the heavens, and the infinite alternate dimensions. And in these dimensions was created the CPUs, or console patron units, who are goddesses that represent each video game console and are guardians of their dimension. Each CPU was given a colored heart to represent their being. Orange of the Dreamcast was given to Uzume, a generic anime girl, and the green heart of Xbox was given to Vert, Lil Uzi Vert, another generic anime girl, along with many others, likely being generic anime girls. But they were all deceived, for another heart was made. In the land of Charlottesville, in the cum stains of ChrisChan's bedroom, the autistic Lord Christian was bestowed the blue heart, making Chris the one CPU to rule them all, and the chosen one who would one day bring upon the world an event known as the Dimensional Merge. In the year of 0 BC, the first ever incarnation of the one we now know as ChrisChan was born. Some guy, I don't know if I really remember his name, it's like a Jeremy, oh yeah, it's G. Yes, that's right. Chris genuinely claims that he's the reincarnation of Jesus Christ himself. I am not joking. I did not make this up. This is real. This is what he actually thinks. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's something written in the good book specifically about not saying that you're God. I'm pretty sure that's in there somewhere. Jesus would then go around and teach the world. And to show that we as humanity understood his message on how to be a good person, we killed him. What the fuck, guys? We get one fucking savior and you fucking kill them? What the fuck, dude? What the fuck? Chris claims to genuinely remember the pain of dying on the cross at this exact instance in time. And that is only the beginning of this fucking insanity. Fortunately for the human race, Jesus would be resurrected 3 days later with a 1993 Dean Signature Dimebag Darrell limited edition Far Beyond driven electric guitar in hand and shredded the Freebird solo. And then when Jesus came back, he was like, guys, I wasn't fucking around. I am the Son of God. And then humanity's savior would be lifted into the heavens with the teachings of... And then Jesus in his divine wisdom was put in a book so good that the book would soon become known as the Good Book, based upon how good of a book it was. I need to fucking power wash my brain with holy water after reading that, holy shit. In 1389 AD, another one of Chris's distant ancestors, King Arthur, along with Chris's mother's distant ancestor, the wizard Merlin, formed a coalition of kings to defeat the dragons infesting this land. You see, at this time, mankind lived amongst what we now in our modern age refer to as mythical creatures. Beings such as cyclopses, unicorns, and giants roamed this land, and were portrayed in such artwork of the time. Eventually, mankind came into conflict with the dragons, and King Arthur and Merlin casted all the creatures out of this dimension using incredibly powerful magic, splitting the dimension itself in two, along with both of themselves. And in between the two dimensions was formed the nearly impenetrable fourth wall, eternally dividing the two worlds. The two dimensions would come to be known as Universe 1218, our dimension where we live, and Universe C197, the land of the mythical creatures. Prior to the splitting of the dimension, creative types were particularly drawn to these mythical creatures, and with the splitting of the dimensions, they retained a psychic connection across the fourth wall. Though this event would eventually be buried beneath the sands of time and become forgotten to all history books, creative people would use their imaginativeness to reach over the wall and to create what is known as the OCs, or original characters, which were never actually imagined, but subconsciously chronicled from over the other side, meaning that creative people aren't actually creating their characters, they're actually seeing them from the other dimension, but they don't know it. For example, someone like J.R.R. Tolkien wasn't actually ever making up Frodo, Gandalf, Sauron, Legolas, all those guys. He was unknowingly chronicling real events that exist in the other dimension, which, I mean, that makes sense. At some long-forgotten age in the distant past, two tribes battled for dominance over the ancient land of what later tongues would know as North America, the Cherokee clan and the Wasabi clan. Legend tells that they were once friends, but later became bitter enemies when the Wasabi guy, Chris doesn't seem to have given him a name. The Wasabi guy, leader, king, betrayed the Cherokee by stealing the crown of the Cherokee king, beginning a bitter war between the two. As you can tell, this is very accurate to the real Cherokee people. Their battles raged on for an eternity until they were united by a common foe, the evil wizard known as Count Graduan, a character who started off as a personification of Chris's loneliness after graduating high school, that eventually morphed into being reincarnated throughout time, that Chris, thinks is actually real. After uniting forces and successfully defeating Count Graduan, the Cherokee and the Wasabi clan would seal him within a magical orb, imprisoning him for hundreds and hundreds of years. Now, this story is explained in Sonichu issue 2, which later down the road would be retconned a lot, and Chris would just change a bunch of shit for seemingly no reason. So let me do a little game theory for the timeline so it makes a little more sense. The timeline for how Chris describes these events is really confusing. Chris first states that Graduan was born in 1357 to a family of British nobility, but then gets sealed in the orb in 1409, but Chris would later retcon this, probably because it doesn't make sense that any British people would be in North America in 1409, because, Christopher Columbus hadn't sailed the ocean blue in 1492 yet, so these events would have to take place at some point after 1492. But in 2017, Chris would give us a lot more lore and explain more about Count Graduan's story. In the revised version of the origin of Count Graduan, he's also born into a family of English nobility, but instead in the year 1433 during the Hundred's Year War, and would enlist as a soldier, but sadly perish at the hands of a French soldier in 1448, but later would be reincarnated again as a British soldier in the American Revolution in Boston, taking part in the Boston Massacre, and eventually would retire after the Revolution and start living with esoteric Jew wizards. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. Who would take him under their wing and teach him the art of wizardry. And it's my theory that around this time, he would return to America and fight the Cherokee and Wasabi clans, and then become imprisoned in the orb. And I guess this would happen at some point during the mid-1790s. But Chris, being Chris, states that Graduan dies of old age in the 1790s, which completely contradicts my theory, which makes none of this make any fucking sense. This makes no fucking sense. He should have been unsealed in the 1790s. Why would Chris make it not that? It makes so much more sense that way. After sealing Graduan in the sphere, at some previously mentioned nonsensical period in time that makes no fucking sense, the ancient druids of the tribes would etch in stone a vision of the future known as the Ancient Prophecy, which is a pun that's super funny. The prophecy reading: it is prophesied by the ancient masters that the reincarnation of our leader will take pen in hand and combine a mouse and a hedgehog and give birth to a new electric creature. Then the leader will place his handmade medallion on the pedestal and release the powers that were his, as well as his lady and rival's powers. The powers will transform you all into electric creatures with variable powers of good, bad, and peace. Also, an evil will strike the day the original electrical creature finds the cave. Only the released powers can defeat the evil." End quote. Knowing that eventually Count Graduan would one day be free, they sealed the prophecy enshrined in pure gold deep beneath the ground in the dungeon beside Graduan, waiting for the day the chosen one would venture into the cave and meet his destiny. And in the year 1900, balls were invented. These ones. This will make sense further down the line, so keep watching. You'll get the balls lore. In the fall of 1948, in a cave atop the ice-tipped peak of a mysterious mountain, somewhere in the lands that would one day be known as Quickville, a peculiar purple egg would hatch upon being struck by a mysterious rainbow of unknown origin.
Foreshadowing.
Hatching a mysterious purple hedgehog-like creature who soon after is met with the telepathic voice of a shadowy figure known as Mewtwo, who would take the young hedgehog under his wing and teach him the art of using his dormant telepathic psychic powers, until one day, after much training, he finally evolved into his true form, and henceforth would be known as MAGICHAN. Get it? It's like magician and Chan, ChrisChan, MAGICHAN. It's combined. It's a pun.
It's really funny.
MAGICHAN, soon after this evolution, would realize his true cosmic purpose in the universe. He was to psychically guide the soul of the Chosen One throughout the universe to meet his own destiny. The Chosen One being known as Chris. On February the 24th, 1982, a man named Robert Chandler would venture into Northern Virginia to found a magnificent city that he would name Quickville, based on the initials of his newly born son, Christian Weston Chandler. The hero and the grand messiah of our story. As Chris grew up, so did the city itself alongside him, till it eventually became a fully independent city-state under the completely, totally, definitely not dictatorial rule of Robert Chandler and his son. On June 12, 1991, a man named Reldnak Natsu NIGHTSIRHC would be born from an egg in rural Montana, where he would be raised by a gang of bikers who taught him how to eat their sketty, who taught him how to be strong and tough. His parents believed in letting their kid choose its own name, so on his 7th birthday, he chose the name NAITSIRHC, after having dreams from the future, where he'd come into contact with a man named Christian Weston Chandler. If you couldn't tell, Reldnak Natsu NIGHTSIRHC is Christian Weston Chandler backwards, which is fucking retarded. And then they died, because Team Rocket killed them, but miraculously, NAITSIRHC survived, and they took him under their wing, and taught him to be even more strong and badass and cool, until one day, he'd face the man known as Christian Weston Chandler. From this point onward, a lot of the major plot points are mostly from the comics until the later half of the video. So remember, this isn't meant to be a summary of the comics, it's meant to be a summary of just the lore. So a lot of the comics are going to be skipped because legit a solid third of them are just complete filler that goes absolutely nowhere. So this is just the lore, no fuck filler, lore only. And now we shall indulge in the sacred holy scriptures known as the Sonichu comics. In 2004, our savior, Christian Weston Chandler, would release his creative juices and would put pen to paper, bestowing the Sonichu comics upon humanity on the fated date of February 1st, 2003. Note that the quickie says that this takes place in 1998, but they're actually fucking wrong. The city of Station Square was under siege by the woesome infernal beast known as the Perfect Chaos Monster. 5 miles away, a humble Pikachu watches on silently, observing the devastation. Meanwhile, Sonic springs into action and enters his supersonic form. But regrettably, Sonic is deflected by the Perfect Chaos Monster, colliding it with a nearby Pikachu, the powers of both beings amalgamating into a brand new being. The fabled, infamous, feared, loved, reviled Sonichu. And in the blast, unleashing the chaotic rainbow, which would scatter beyond space and time. Remember when I said the MAGICHAN egg hatched because of mysterious rainbow? This was it. This was the rainbow. It's all connected. I'm a master filmmaker. At the exact same time, the fated chaotic rainbow would also land on a nearby male Raichu.
Oh, hell nah, nigga. Oh, you a dude, cut? Oh, that's fucked up, Lo.
In the original comic, it says a female Raichu, but Chris way later would change it to say that Roschu was born male, but got transgender surgery at some point. Nothing hilarious about that. The rainbow, evolving it into Sonichu's destined sweetheart, Rosechu. Back in Station Square, Sonichu and Sonic join forces to vanquish the Perfect Chaos Monster. After the long-fought battle, Sonichu would stumble upon his future wife-to-be, Rosechu. And would become boyfriend and girlfriend and have sex
With penis.
Foreshadowing.
Later, the new couple would go shopping, and Rosechu, the stupid bitch only wants to buy clothes. That's all fucking women want, is to go shopping and buying clothes and eating hot chip and charge their phone. When suddenly, a Zapdos caves in the roof with the evil NAITSIRHC at the helm. They fight, and Sonichu uses several ball-based attacks, including the infamously deadly Sky Uppercut, Mega Kick, and the mighty Double Team. Using these really badass, deadly attacks, the Zapdos is defeated, but NAITSIRHC survives and swears revenge. Upon victory over NAITSIRHC, the mayor of Quickville, Chris himself, comes to congratulate our heroes. After literally just meeting Sonichu, Chris starts complaining to him about not having a girlfriend and that he's actually a true cell and not a fake cell piece of shit like Sonichu. God, I fucking hate fake cells! Oh, fake cells piss me off! And then the issue ends, concluding the first installment of the sacred tapestry that is the Sonichu comics. After their last battle, NAITSIRHC was able to recover strands of Sonichu's hair containing his DNA and began using it to bioengineer a being strong enough to one day defeat Sonichu. With the help of Dr. Robotnik from Sonic and Giovanni from Pokemon, as they were beginning the process on creating this fated being, Bill the scientist, the bumbling buffoon, spilled cherry cola over the DNA, but for some reason they just don't give a shit and use the contaminated DNA anyways. The cherry cola giving the new Sonichu a darker color. The three immediately notice his swarthy negroidic appearance and dub him Black Sonichu, or as I know him, Or, what I pressed to shoot now? They teach the newly born Sonichu about who he is, and that it is his destiny to destroy the one they know as Sonichu. Meanwhile, Sonichu is running around aimlessly with Rosechu, while 13% 50% Sonichu watches them in hiding, like an r/atheism user watches his wife get railed by another man. When suddenly, Sonichu collides with Sonic, and seeing the opportunity, Dodge Hellcat Sonichu steals Rosechu, likely mistaking her for a white woman's purse. Seeing that Rosechu's been kidnapped, Sonic and Sonichu team up and chase after him, unknowingly falling right into their trap. Sonichu arrives at NAITSIRHC and Robotnik's lair and gets ensnared in an energy force field thing, but is immediately saved by Sonic. And then everyone fights, and then Fried Chicken Sonichu is defeated, and Rosechu is saved. Hooray. While Sonichu is aimlessly running around Quickville, he stumbles upon a mysterious cave with an inscription referencing a fabled hero of destiny, who is the only one who may enter this cave. There's also an old man who looks like me in real life. Chris then somehow materializes out of thin air and joins with Sonichu. They then venture into the mysterious Cave of Destiny, where the cavekeeper informs the duo of the ancient prophecy, clever pun, which foretells of the reincarnation of the King of the Cherokee, who will take up pen and paper and combine a Sonic and Pikachu, creating the creature of prophecy. And then, the chosen one, Sonichu and Chris's true love, will enter the cave and have their ancient powers awakened and slay the evil beast of legend. Chris places the Sonichu medallion on the pedestal and is flooded with visions of a reincarnation of himself from the distant past, who's the leader of the ancient Cherokee clan. Chris then awakens his inner Sonichu and transforms into his erection-inducing alternate form, ChrisChan's Sonichu.
Electric Hedgehog power! Pew! This would be me in my super mode. If I actually had the superpowers. But I don't in real life.
The resemblance is uncanny. Meanwhile, Wes Isley and Sarah Hammer are receiving their own medallions. And you're probably wondering who those names are that I mentioned. At the time, Chris had a crush on his childhood friend Sarah Hammer, who was dating a guy named Wes Isley. And Chris was very Smucker's Concord grape jelly over her. So to cope with reality, Chris basically wrote into his comic that he was destined to get with Sarah, and that Wes was this evil, terrible bad guy who was out to get him, which is a very healthy way of processing relationships. I know every time I personally get rejected and black-pilled over my Norwooding and being sub 8, I write Sonic the Hedgehog fanfiction where I bag that bitch. Meanwhile, an evil wizard approaches Wes Isley and informs Wes that him and Chris are rivals, with reincarnations battling throughout the centuries. And then Wes transforms into an evil Sonichu with a lust for Chris's blood. Then Sarah is visited by the Queen of the Cherokee, informing her of the prophecy, and she becomes a Sonichu as well. Chris and Wes eventually meet and have their epic foretold battle. But Chris, before the fight, takes a moment to trauma dump to Wes.
Okay, I'll admit I was jealous of you because you get to spend more time with Sarah than I do. But I only felt jealousy because I cared about her.
That's my ChrisChan impression. The battle then commences. Wes is defeated, and Sarah then blackpills Wes. Yes, Wes, and I say that we are through. I do not love you anymore. And then Wes says, no! No! But suddenly, they learn of an invasion taking place in Quickville, and they levitate over there and discover that a massive stone golem is destroying the city, and it's being controlled by the evil witch known as Mary Lee Walsh. Now, a little info on Mary Lee Walsh. At the time, Chris was embarking on what he called his love quest, which is his way of saying that a Quicka was trying to get some pussy. Shortly after his love quest, he would realize that just about every time he approached a woman, they would tell him that they already had a boyfriend, which was pretty much just a nice way of telling him to fuck off.
Yeah, Daddy!
So he devised a devious plan. What if, instead of approaching women himself, the women would approach him? But how could this be done? How could this be possible? He knew a way. Deep into the night, he would forge the attraction sign, a sign that he could hang up anywhere that women would read and be drawn to him like moths to a flame by his suave white boy swag. But he was thwarted by a woman named Mary Lee Walsh, who tore down his sign that he placed on campus. Chris's jimmies were so rustled that he would write her into the comic as an evil witch. Big tangent. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, Mary Lee Walsh attacking the city. As our heroes levitate towards the evildoers, they notice in Mary's hand a talking evil orb. The CHEROKEEAN and Wasabi clans may have put me away for centuries, but I will rule the world. It was Count Graduon himself. They then realized they'll have to temporarily put aside their petty differences to defeat this beast. So Sarah, Chris, and Wes band together just as the Wasabi and Cherokee clans of their ancestors had done once hundreds of years before. Sarah would first shoot the golem in its eye, blinding it, while Wes would use his flame ability against its weak, off-balance knees, while Chris attacks the now open center. Noticing the effectiveness, they would use Team Blast Blue Fireball to do spinny attack thing, and then, they won. Now you're probably wondering, where did all those other Sonichus come from that we saw in the intro? Well, in the following issue, our feeble minds were finally enlightened as to where the fated rainbow blast had landed, scattering across time and space. It would scatter 69 destined eggs across the cosmos, even though there's actually 70, awakening the Sonichu species far and wide, including Ted Bundy Chu, Bill Cosby Chu, and Harvey Weinstein Chu. I am not joking about that, that's real. And yes, I'll come back to it later, but it's not important now. What you need to know is that the legendary blast of the chaotic rainbow in this exact moment would awaken 5 eggs. And what would emerge from these 4 eggs was the stuff of legends. Nestled deep within the labyrinthine expanse of the deep rainforest, the green egg would birth Wild Sonichu, the grass and electric type hedgehog. He's Sonichu but green. From the abyssal depths of the unfeeling sea emerges Bubbles Rosechew, hedgehog of water and electricity, who's Rosechew but blue. From the holiest vestige of the high papacy emerged Angelica Rosechew, the flying electric type Pokemon. She's Rosechew but white. And lastly, from the Lego Ninjago emerges my favorite of the chaotic combo, Punchy Sonichu, the fighting electric type hedgehog. He's Knuckles, but he's Knuckles. He's literally just fucking Knuckles. In the following chapter, resisting arrest Sonichu and Sonichu would meet once again, after Sonichu tried to steal the Sunstone. The Sunstone's a MacGuffin that's just introduced in this chapter and that never appears again, so you don't have to worry about it. But before the fated duel, Loud on public transit Sonichu makes the fatal mistake of asking, "You and what army?" And then the rest of the guys appear behind Sonichu and look super fucking gangsta and badass. They're so gangsta and badass that they all team up after just meeting in this exact moment. And then Sonichu says, "My Calvary," which is a joke that does not make any sense because none of them are on horseback. Future Meatloaf here. Past Meatloaf is actually a fucking dumbass because cavalry can also refer to a source of rescue or help in an emergency. And then they have a big fight where Sonichu and the guys turn into a Jackson Pollock painting and they defeat Sonichu, I like how this issue ends with an ad for a number that you can call to get a free girlfriend delivered to your house.
Just call anonymously.
You call anonymously!
I can't. They know me. They know my voice. They'll know me. Please, you gotta do it for me. I'm begging you. Please. Please.
Sonichu issue 4 is being skipped for not adding literally anything to the overarching plot. Except for having the best panel Chris would ever make, Big Sippa. Sonichu issue 5 begins with Sarah Hammer's wedding to some unknown individual, who is not Chris, which makes the last issue and the prophecy that the entire issue surrounds completely fucking pointless. And Wes tries to crash the wedding out of anger at being rejected by Sarah due to his low bone density, negative canthal tilt, and low facial harmony. But wait a minute, I thought the ancient prophecy clearly stated that Chris would marry Sarah. Yes, it did say that. That plot point is literally just completely forgotten after Chris found a new girl to quagmiriously obsess over, Megan Schroeder. So yeah, the last issue was completely fucking pointless. But suddenly, Wes barges in, enraged at the fact that Sarah wasn't marrying a supreme gentleman like him, and kidnaps her, and then he Derek Chauvin's Chris. Thankfully, we can rebuild him. Chris then gets up and they have an epic battle. But when Chris seems on the verge of defeat, a projectile launched from some unknown figure saves Chris. Who could this mysterious figure be? I really want to know. It's Megan. It's Megan Schroeder and Magaji's skunk. The girl Chris desperately wanted to plow. She whips out her guitar and plays what I'd like to think is the timeless classic song, Hell Yeah, on the album Hell Yeah by the band Hell Yeah. A timeless classic! Which causes Chris to be very aroused in what has to be the most fucking down bad illustration that has ever been put to paper in the history of the human race. This again vanquishes Wes, and Sarah is saved, and Wes is banished to the Shadow Realm using a Yu-Gi-Oh card. At some unspecified point in time later, but still in the same issue, the Jerkops have taken over the city. They're patrolling the city like the fucking Gestapo, breaking up couples and thwarting all romance and relationships, making Virginia truly for virgins, at the command of the evil Mary Lee Walsh. You know, this is actually happening in real life. Well unaware of the wicked, dastardly events transpiring, Sonichu and Chris are sitting on a bench jerking each other off, while Chris rants about his relationship with Megan. Here is an excerpt.
Yeah, Pop. Just like me and Rosie. But Megan hasn't yet returned the feelings, right?
Well, Sonichu, I've been feeling a lot better since I first met Megan. She's the sweetest, and she has the right spunk amount. Among all ladies. Yeah, but I've been very patient with Meg-chan by being a kind and understanding friend for her and giving her time and space and helping her feel good. Not only that, she's warming up to me. But with each amount of time I spend with her personally, with each of her warm, tender smiles, and with each loving thought about her, my heart grows fonder with the true love I feel for Megan Schroeder. At least she knows that I have those feelings for her, and I had the guts to tell her personally.
Well, Rose-Chew and the other hedgehogs and I wish you the best of luck with her.
I find this really funny because he states that Megan is warming up to him, and while he was writing this exact issue, she was actively emailing him saying that she's not interested in a relationship with him and that he should stop touching her. Which, she's really warming up to you, bud. In Quickville Square, the evil witch Mary Walsh sends several forces of Jerkops to overwhelm the city's own police and wreak havoc across Quickville as an intentional means of luring Chris and the guys into her trap. Chris and Sonichu make it to Quickville Square and immediately send word to the rest of the chaotic combo, along with Chris's make-believe twin sister Crystal, who's here for some reason and is now also a Sonichu.
Yes, with my battalion of jerk-offs at the ready and a monster in my shadow, I'm sure to lure that nuisance Christian into my trap. When he stands in the rectangle below, I'll have him in my clutches.
Oh my god, that hurts so much. Every voice I've done in this video just fucking hurts. Chef from South Park also joins the fray and tells Chris that his design for Quickville Mall is bad, when in reality, his design is actually awesome. Yeah, this is awesome. Chris and Crystal then attempt to unscrew his head like a robot for some reason, but they're thwarted by Mary Lee Walsh's dark sphere attack. Chef starts charging up for a slam attack, but is halted by a projectile being thrown by Megan. Megan then has Chris reconvene and reconsider his current strategy. So Chris and Crystal decide to do a merging soul pure pulse jolt lance. Then Chris charges his curse Yehamiha, but is deflected by Mary Lee Walsh's magic scepter, turning him back into his human form and plunging him into the dark abyss. But Mary Lee Walsh realizes Chris would suffer more if he lost Crystal, so she flips the spell, sending Crystal into the dark mirror. While still during the Battle of Quickville, Patty Chandler, Chris's dog, and Darkbind Sonichu arrive and blast Mary Lee Walsh into a vortex, using what looks like croissants. And Mary is launched far into the distance, defeated at last.
Why did they hype up the Mary Lee Walsh fight the entire last issue? And then in literally the next chapter, she gets beaten in like 2 panels? Why is it written like that? Why?
Later, our heroes venture into Chris's office, where they discuss how they need to get their hands on some big, multicolored balls.
HD.
Known as the Sonichu balls. Darkbind then trauma dumps about how his princess Zelina Rosechew was put under a curse of eternal sleep, and only the power of the balls can awaken her, presumably by their rancid ball scent, and that they've already found 2 of the balls. This might be my favorite panel in the entire series. My 2 balls. But suddenly their phallic object discussion is interrupted by an explosion, and they see that a mysterious evil green Sonichu is robbing K Jewelers and finds a purple ball in the rubble, the Sonichu ball. Our Grand Prophet Chris then arrives alongside Magichan and Sonichu and battles NAITSIRHC, but they're repelled back, and without warning, the evil green Sonichu reveals himself as Raldnak Natsu NAITSIRHC, who sends Chris into the dark dimension so they can discuss things. He then tells Chris how he's a complete inverse of him, who is the opposite of him in every way. Where Chris is good and righteous, NAITSIRHC is evil. Where Chris is incredibly sexy and handsome, NAITSIRHC is ugly and doesn't look smacks, and where Chris is extremely straight and hates penis, NAITSIRHC is a huge fat NAITSIRHC is gay. Meanwhile, south side of a large metropolitan area, Sonichu informs our heroes of how NAITSIRHC is also trying to find and presumably fondle the 7 Sonichu balls so he can take over the world and kill Christian Weston Chandler. They then break out of the dark dimension and transform into their Sonichu forms, and they have another Jackson Pollock painting battle. The Jackson Pollocking rages on, from location to location, until they eventually are in a place all too familiar to Chris, Manchester High School. Christian's back is slammed against the wall, on the verge of defeat, when NAITSIRHC finally grasps the ball, and was nearly about to give the final blow. Farewell, Christian Weston Chandler. When moments before Chris is executed, NAITSIRHC is hit on the head with a basketball, coming from somewhere unknown, when an old, long-forgotten friend steps into frame. Bionic the Hedgehog, Chris's first ever OC, first drawn in 1996, and secretly abandoned by Chris until 2004. Bionic is the incredible combination of Sonic the Hedgehog and basketball, after being hit in the head with a basketball in high school. We then flash to the hospital, where NAITSIRHC is waking up after the battle, and he swears revenge against Chris. In Sonichu number 7, while still in Manchester High School, Magachi, Megan's OC, comes in and invites Bionic out on a date, to which Bionic makes this super alpha innuendo which gives me a boner. A kiss after this date, and after the third, we, he, ya, hey. Upon my further analysis into the literary works, this means sex.
Good for you, bionic.
Seeing Megaji and Bionic together makes ChrisChan black pill incel ideology, and he starts to gently weep like George Harrison's guitar. But soon after, the gang realizes that the balls are nearby, so they go to search for them, but to no avail, until MAGICHAN realizes that the ball is here in this exact place, but not in this exact time. Since the Sonichu balls are capable of moving beyond time, MAGICHAN realizes that Chris has actually come into contact with the ball before, in November the 13th, 1996, when Chris was hit in the head with a basketball, which gave him the inspiration to create Bionic the Hedgehog. But it was no basketball. It was actually, the entire time, it was the Sonichu ball, which would be a cool plot twist if they talked about that previously in the story. Chris then does a Family Guy cutaway gag.
Peter, what are you doing?
Hello, Brian Griffin. I'm doing Sonichu issue number 7.
What the
Kill them. Kill them. Kill them. Kill them.
Hey, at least I'm not drinking, Brian.
Where Peter Griffin, dressed as him, shits in the Ghostbusters car, similar to how former Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison shit his pants in a McDonald's. MAGICHAN then informs them that to go back in time, they must make a magic sphere around them, and if Sonichu runs fast enough on the sphere in the opposite direction, they'll be able to go back in time to ChrisChan's high school to get Sonichu balls off the menu. That's right! Chris and Sonichu are going back in time to Chris's high school to get Sonichu balls off the menu. That's right! Chris and Sonichu are going back! They arrive in the past at Chris's high school and see an unsuspecting young Chris with his friend Joe Herring, who's talking about how he tossed salad with his girlfriend the other night. And I don't think that Chris knew what that phrase meant when he wrote this.
I was eating some booty cheeks.
Chris then starts spouting off memories from his time here at Manchester High School, when suddenly the ball appears just above his head. They catch it right after it hits young Chris's head, and in that exact moment, a flash of inspiration was ignited that inflamed into a spark of genius, implanting a young Chris's mind with his first ever original character, Bionic the Hedgehog, creating a long line of creative lineage, and the rest is history.
Can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore.
Chris, MAGICHAN, and Sonichu then head back to the present, but as they're stopping, the power of the balls triggers on accident, launching Chris through the time sphere into the abyssal depths of infinite time. I'm not picking up his presence nearby. Wait. Ah! We lost him. We lost Chris. Meanwhile, from the dark depths of the criminal underground of Quickville, the darkest, most depraved villains Chris had ever put to page were joining their evil forces under the command of Mary Lee Walsh, which I feel like I've said 40 times at this point. Knowing the opportunity was right with Chris thrusted into the dimensional void beyond time. Meanwhile, in said time void, Chris's comic self is seemingly breaking through the fourth wall barrier between dimensions, getting flashes of all the recent painful moments from the real world, such as the L Riz with Megan, and the different trolling attempts against him. Because it was around this time in the real world, 1218, but like actually real life, not retarded comics, that Chris first started gaining popularity on the internet, and soon would become an infamous victim of trolling, which Chris, likely as a method of coping, would start to overlap real-life and fictional events into his comic.
I can't believe this. In space, no one can hear you, scream. In time, you are heard to infinity. What the? Random new memories popping into my head. What, an email from Megan Joshua Martinez? I haven't seen him in years. Don't let her lie. Slanderous photos of me garbage magazine. Am I true that? A drawing of me and Megan and total feelings tear around. She I never met personally. I said that. Still, curse you for said garbage.
Okay, here goes. It's porn!
This issue starts 2 years after the original issue, with the announcement that all the Sonichus are now above the age of consent, and that they fully support wearing condoms and having safe sex. This is gonna come back shortly.
And have lasting consequences.
A little background, around this time Chris is being called gay a lot online, and having his characters slanderously drawn having gay sex with each other. So in response, he hatched a plot to forever cement in the wrongdoers' minds his pure straight sexuality. To counter them, he would draw true and honest straight porn of his characters.
Well, sweet Bolt, we're both nice and clean. You ready to get dirty again? You bet your sweet bod, girl. Good thing. You bet your sweet bod, girl. Good thing we stopped for a pack of condoms. It's too bad the regular size ones break easily on my 7-inch. Too bad the regular size ones break easily on my 7-incher. On my 7-incher.
Why does Sonichu sound like that?
It's more like size 5 or less to measure to those wimps.
Sonichu just called your penis a wimp.
Well, maybe the double extra length will stay stronger. Stay stronger and longer on your healthy girth.
Your healthy girth. I'm taking too fucking long with it.
Well, I'm itching for a little missionary cowgirl. You think you can handle it? I think I can, hotshot. Insert rod A into slot B.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Oh no, oh god. Oh, fuck. Get it out of here. Oh, no. Get this out of here. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck is this? Oh my god. Get it out of here. Get it out of here. Get it out. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. So much of this fucking issue is just porn. It's just fucking porn. What the fuck? Why do I have to read this? I hate this so much. What the fuck? After Sonichu and Rosechu are done having extremely graphic sex, Sonichu and Rosechu discover to their complete shock and chagrin that there's a website called 4cent Garbage, where people are saying mean things about them, including posting images of Rosechu drawn with a penid. By the way, 4cent Garbage is a parody of 4chan and Encyclopedia Dramatica, which were both websites that made fun of Chris a lot in the late 2000s, and would pretty much become his mortal enemy from this point on, which makes Sonichu angered and vengeful, and Rosechu comforts him by saying that she doesn't actually have a penid in real life. Which is actually not true. Rosechu did actually have a penid because Chris would retroactively make Rosechu transgender years later for some reason. After seeing so many penid images, they get mad and decide to go straight to the source, the 4cent Garbage HQ, which also coincidentally has a Sonichu ball hidden within it, which Wild seeks out. Once they get there, they meet former President Woodrow Wilson, and he tells them to go to the cursed floor 66+6 to meet the evil, mysterious 4chan man guy.
Jason, Kendrick, how?
While Sonichu and Rosechu ascend up the elevator past an ascending series of heinously wicked floors of escalating depravity, while Wild is sneaking around, trying to find the Sonichu ball. When Rosechu and Sonichu finally get to the top of the elevator, they're met with the sight of a dark hooded figure, radiating an aura of unholiness, who reveals himself as none other than Jason Kendrick Howell, the real-life troll who created the Encyclopedia Dramatica page that made fun of him. They then battle. and then they stop battling for some reason. And as they're walking off, Jason commits the unspeakably vile act of throwing a pickle at Rosechew while her back was turned, which unleashes her inner brat-coded girl boss, where she takes off all her clothes and screams, "I am woman, hear me roar," and kills Jason. I'm not even a woman, and I just feel so fucking empowered! Also, Wilde finds the Sonichu ball, meaning there's only one left to find, which is such a riveting plot point that Chris forgot to illustrate him doing that. Chris drawing 18 whole pages of was just more important than the actual plot. There's also a second part of this issue which doesn't really contain much plot, but it introduces a new Rosechew named Sylvana. This would have lasting consequences. While Sonichu and the guys are distracted at a dating education class, Mary Lee Walsh decides that this is the most opportune time for her to once again strike back against the hedgehogs in the most action-packed issue Chris had ever written. With the largest army of jerk-ops the world had ever seen on her side, the end of Quickville was nigh. First, they ambush Wilde and Simonla. By the way, Simonla is basically a drill Sonichu that was copied from this fan character Simonechu, who in turn is a copy of the character Simone from the anime Gurren Lagann, who GenoSamuel pronounced as semen, which I find funny. But by the hair of their chinny chin chins, they escape the jerk-ops' clutches and fend them off. The jerk-ops, now in advanced flying mecha transformers, then go after Angelica and Sneasel, but also are defeated. Mary Lee Walsh then sends out a massive army of Transformers to annihilate Bubbles and Blake. Note that he's named Blake now instead of Black Sonichu, so I can't do racist names anymore. I know, it's not my choice. Bubbles and Blake then use a tag team attack and create a massive tsunami, wiping out every last Transformer. Bubbles, stay back, I'll handle these pilot-free mechs.
I forgot which sound effect I was gonna put here.
You're probably noticing that every enemy just kind of gets immediately destroyed with next to no difficulty, but oh, just you wait, the merry suing has only just begun. And on the eastern edge of Quickville City, Sonichu and Rosechew are completely surrounded by jerk-ops.
Take your weapons, Sonichu.
Just turn me loose, sweetheart. I am my own weapon.
Slash, high jump, homing attack, rolling kick, sky uppercut, paralyzing blade. After a serious bout of fighting, Sonichu is left exhausted by fighting so many Transformers that we now know are called the Decepti-Jerks. Sonichu then realizes that he must fight fire with fire and summons Sonchu, Chris's very own Transformer, based on his real-life car, which transforms and springs into action. Meanwhile, Sonichu converts to Islam and puts on a hijab. During the fray, Rosechew is captured by a Decepti-Jerk, and Sonichu valiantly gives chase. While in pursuit, we get the appearance of the man, the myth, the legend, the fan favorite, Liquid Chris. Oh my God! Yes! They then battle, and Liquid Chris is defeated for being a dang dirty imposter.
You're a phony! Hey, this guy's a great big phony!
With Liquid banished, Sonichu travels on and finally finds Rosechew in the clutches of a Decepti-Jerk at the mercy of Giovanni, Robotnik, and NAITSIRHC. And I suggest you keep your distance. 'Cause right now I'm dangerous. Withhold your attacks and make no attempt to rescue her before I finish my say, or she will die.
All right, I'm listening. Speak your evil, coward.
Very well. I want you to pledge your loyalty and obedience to my son, open parentheses, question mark, close parentheses, Reldnak, and make him mayor of Quickville.
What? Hells no!
I implore you to think it over. What's more important to you, your city or your sweetheart wife?
Giovanni? Robotnik? Where's Rosechew?
She's literally right there.
Rosie, what have you done to her?
God, I hate doing that Sonichu voice. After Bionic distracts the Decepticjerk, he engages NAITSIRHC in a battle while Giovanni and Robotnik flee, and achieves righteous victory by deflecting NAITSIRHC's own attack into his ballsack. But as the sun was slowly setting upon Quickville, Sonichu notices Mary Lee Walsh hovering in the sky, commanding the chaos, and bounds towards her, knocking her off her broom. But luckily for her, Graduan, imprisoned in her scepter, makes a magic floor for her and Sonichu to have a long-fated duel. Mary uses pure balls attack, but is swiftly evaded by Sonichu's counterattacks. But in response, Mary uses big ball defense. But big balls were not merely enough! Sonichu does a spin dash, overpowering the ballular defense shield, which knocks her off the platform, and Graduan betrays her by refusing to save her. But at the last minute, as Mary begins to fall, Sonichu catches her, because he is Nietzschean and beyond good and evil. They then decide to unbetray each other and fly off into the distance. And then for some reason, and this exact instance, Chris comes out of the void and now he's back, and everyone is joyous at this joyous occasion. Huzzah. Issue 10 is so far the deepest dive into the fathomless, unfathomable void that doesn't even have one fathom! Not even one! That is ChrisChan's mind, and yet another shred of sanity long lost by Chris. In summary, this chapter is some of the most depraved Chris would ever get, so buckle your foreskin, because I am so fucking ready. So Chris, after returning from the time void, informs his friends about how he had sex with his future wife, and that it was super cool and awesome. But that he's also incredibly, unfathomably straight, and that while he was gone, scientists studied his genes and discovered that he is the straightest man in human existence, and that they were befuddled and amazed that so much straightness could be contained in just one single human being. And because of that, they decided to use his DNA to create an anti-gay vaccine. Hail Fauci! Hail Fauci! Hail Fauci! To cure homosexuality once and for all. Because Chris is so incredibly straight with his anti-gay vaccines at hand. Hail Fauci! The guys hatch a plan to put the anti-gay vaccines in the water supply so that homosexuality can be forever extinct worldwide. But as they're beginning the first steps of their plan, Jason Kendrick Howell watches on, knowing that Chris is falling right into his trap.
Wait, wasn't he dead?
As Chris is separated from the group, he is suddenly ambushed by the evil NAITSIRHC. And they fight in one of the few illustrations by Chris that actually looks decent, but they're so evenly matched that they're both knocked out of their deviant art forms. NAITSIRHC gets up, ready to deal the final blow. Any last words?
Yeah, drink my blood.
And NAITSIRHC is stabbed with the vaccine, turning him straight forevermore. Later, Chris meets up with the guys and picks up his guitar and becomes graphics in 2013. Then, Sonichu, Chris's Transformer car, becomes a stage. And to everyone's shock, the greatest rock band of all time,
that isn't King Crimson,
Christian and the Hedgehog Boys, has returned. Little known fact, John Lennon and Paul McCartney actually stole all their music from Christian and the Hedgehog Boys to form the Beatles, which is a true story that I made up. Their debut also has a 1.73 on Rate Your Music, which is way too low. Go give it 5 stars. I think that would be funny. They then start playing Revive Zordon, Chris's incredible reimagined cover of Cat Scratch Fever by Ted Nugent, which isn't even a parody. I think Ted Nugent actually stole this song from Chris because it's so awesome. And then because of the song's previously mentioned awesomeness, it causes 4 Cent Garbage Building to collapse because the support beams were not weighted to withstand this much awesomeness. What a shame that the engineers glossed over the fact that awesomeness can in fact melt steel beams. And Jason, stricken with fear, vows to never again troll Chris. 2 of the trolls escape the collapsing building with former President Woodrow Wilson, and he tells the trolls that he will torture them in hell for eternity because they are gay. And with the building's collapse, 100 trolls would be killed in the falling rubble. And after that, MAGICHAN meets up with Chris and Sonichu and tells them that he successfully contaminated the world's water supply with the anti-gay vaccine. And by Chris's birthday, all homosexuality on Earth from this point on would be extinct. And everybody would think that's so awesome, they would make Chris's birthday a worldwide holiday known as Christian Love Day. And then Meg from Family Guy appears and appears and makes out with Chris. But oh my god! Meg is actually Sylvana! Oh my god! What a shock and twist! I wonder if this would have any further implications. Chris, for some reason, uses the power lying dormant in the balls and transforms himself, awakening colossal ChrisChan. And Sonichu becomes Ultra Sonichu! Using their newfound abilities, Chris saves Crystal from the dark dimension, and Ultra Sonichu travels to Rule Quick, probably the stupidest fucking name I've heard for anything. Rule Quick is literally just Hyrule from the Zelda games, but with Sonichus. Ultra Sonichu then travels through Rule Quick to find Darkbind and Princess Zelina, who's trapped in eternal slumber. Which is literally just verbatim the plot of Zelda 2, a children's Nintendo game where you can canonically have sex with prostitutes. Chris then flies to Alec Benson Leary's house. But who's Alec Benson Leary? I hear you say. Alec Benson Leary is a person from real life who would troll Chris by making parody comics of Sonichu called Asperchu. That's basically just the original Sonichu comics, but with every possible thing added that could possibly offend Chris. Chris then destroys all the files on Alec's computer, forever ridding the world of the blasphemy that is the Asperchu comic. Meanwhile, Sonichu finds the Asperchu characters who apparently exist in the same universe for some reason. Sonichu then uses his godlike abilities to remove their Aspergers and make them not gay anymore. They're so grateful that they say he's like God and Jesus. This would have lasting consequences. Then a robot appears and is instantly defeated in the same page. Because why have characters that can overcome obstacles, you know, with stakes and difficulty? Chris then finds Mary Lee Walsh, where she tells him her origin story, where no one on Earth would love her, so she decided to seek revenge on Chris in particular for some reason, and make sure that he is never able to find true and honest love. They then fight for the millionth fucking time, and Chris for some reason has the swords from God of War, and they have a legendary battle with copious use of automatopoeias. Simone LaRoche then goes to the bathroom and fucking dies. Make joke about Elvis dying on toilet, in parentheses. This is because Simone is a copy of Simon Chu, who I mentioned earlier, whose creator was pissed off that Chris ripped off Simon Chu in some kind of attempt to make Chris learn about parody law or something, which honestly is probably some of the least funny trolling I've ever seen done to Chris. This is fucking lame. This all culminated in an ultimatum, where Chris would have to kill off Simone in his comics, which interestingly was very difficult for Chris to do, because even at the time, in Chris's mind, killing off one of his characters was as heinous as killing a real human being. Which is interesting, because this was in 2010, a whole 7 years before Chris started believing that there are other dimensions that had his characters, but seemingly he always believed that in some way his characters were real, even back in 2010. MAGICHAN then finds the man who murdered Simone, and it's revealed to be Simon Chu himself, and he is immediately put on trial. Days before the trial, Simone and Wild's child hatches from an egg and is named Sandy Rose Chu. In the weeks leading up before the trial, Wild propagandizes Sandy into seeking revenge against Simon Chu for murdering her mother, and she then finally evolves into her adult Sonichu form. The trial then begins, and real-life trolls Mao, Alec, Evan, and Sean are put on trial awaiting the death penalty. And this is where shit takes a turn for the fucking deranged. So I'm gonna have to give an Ultra Man-Child Meltdown warning. Ultra Man-Child Meltdown alert is in effect. Proceed with caution. Hide your wife. Hide your children. The first on the chopping block is Evan Benson Leary, who's executed via electric chair, and is electrocuted 10 times, once by each person that he apparently wronged. And I find it really funny that Wild and Simone are killing him because he killed their family member, which is understandable. And Sonichu is killing him because he called him gay. I'm not joking, that's the actual f***ing reason. And he's electrocuted to death upon the press of a button by the guys. The next to die is Evan, who Wild and Simone are to execute personally. Evan is then tied up, and Simone shreds him to death with her drill hands, tearing him limb from limb and penis. She tears his penis off. Keep in mind that this is a less than 1-year-old child doing this. She then holds hands with Wild, and they both deal the finishing blow. Next is Mao, who fittingly is tied up and executed via firing squad, like it's fucking communist China, which is ironic considering his name. And if that wasn't enough, Chris uses his telekinetic powers to break every bone in his body and then explodes him. Keep in mind, these are real people that Chris is drawing being murdered by him. And then Chris gets on the Jumbotron and copies the speech from Independence Day.
Mankind, that word should have new meaning today. That word should have new meaning for all of us today. We can't be consumed by our petty differences anymore. We will be united by our common interests. Perhaps that is fate that today is Mexico's Flag Day, and we will once again be saluting an image of freedom.
Oh my god, this hurts my voice.
An image of freedom, not just from trolling, loneliness, or persecution, but also from heartbreak. We are fighting for our right to love, to be honest. And when the sun sets day, the 24th of February,
Oh my god, this hurts so f***ing much.
will no longer be known as only a Mexican holiday, but as the day Sonichu fans and I declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight. We are going to survive. We are going to survive. Today we celebrate our Christian Love Day.
And that concludes the second funniest comic ChrisChan ever wrote. But just you wait, the first funniest is soon to come. This is probably one of the most deranged, disgusting fucking things I've ever read. But it's also pretty funny, so... It's also the pretty terrible conclusion to almost every plot point in the story so far. So be warned, it's only gonna get more nonsensical from here. Around the time after issue 10 was released, Chris's laziness would reach a breaking point, and there would be almost no new additions to the comics and the lore for around 7 years, leaving us in the dark age of the Sonichu lore. But worry not! After every dark age comes the Renaissance, and the Sonichu Renaissance was pretty f***ing insane. In 2014, in the universe 1218, the real world, Chris would receive a divine vision from the other side of the cosmic veil. The vision was back to 1969. On the 15th of August, at the famous Woodstock Music and Art Fair, sat a young lesbian woman behind a tree, enjoying the music. Not much is known about this moment, but apparently it was enough to convince Chris 45 years later that his soul was eternally female, which made him realize that he was destined to transition into a woman. Chris is not a woman, so I will not be referring to him as one. After this point, almost all of Chris's writings would start to take the CIA propaganda approach to writing, where all his pre-existing characters would inexplicably either become gay, transgender, or both. Warning, this next excerpt contains transgenders. After 8 long years of waiting, Sonichu fans had nearly given up hope. It seemed Chris would never again create another issue of the beloved and acclaimed Sonichu comic. But on one faithful day in 2017, Chris would grace the eyes of the unwashed masses with the pages of Sonichu issue 11. And it fucking sucked. Even for Chris's standards, it just sucked. Basically, nothing happens, the plot does not get moved forward in any way, and it's just in general really boring, and there's nothing funny about it. The only thing of note is Chris talking about being a girl now and retconning the last issue, where Chris changes the scene where he talks to everyone in Quickville on the Jumbotron to say that in this exact moment, he came out to everyone in Quickville as transgender, even though in the exact panel from the last issue, Chris is literally saying that gay marriage will remain illegal in Quickville. And also, need I remind you, he's also saying that mere minutes after contaminating the entire Earth's water supply to make homosexuality go extinct worldwide. This is the dumbest retcon of all time. This makes no fucking sense. Okay, time for another little game theory, because someone has to take the ropes. Matt Pat's gone. It's now me. I am game theory. Okay, you know how I was saying that in the time between the last 2 issues, Chris retroactively made pretty much every single character either gay or transgender or some kind of combination of fat. What if the vaccine used to cure homosexuality that was made using Chris's DNA? What if, since Chris was gay deep down the whole time, what if the blood in the vaccine was just never straight blood and nobody knew it? So when he put it in the water supply, he unknowingly turned everyone gay. Like all the characters got turned gay because they had Chris's blood. Doesn't that make so much more sense than everyone just randomly becoming gay for literally no reason? It makes sense. It's real. Issue 12 was released in 2017, but it still takes place in 2009 on the timeline. In this issue, Chris seemingly takes influence from the California Department of Education with the story of Robbie Sonichu, a canonically 2-year-old child becoming transgender. with the help of his sisters and his adult Sonichu friends.
I heard that you a pedophile, you touch little boys.
Which is already just a fucking disgusting premise for a comic. Like, what the fuck, Chris? And as if that wasn't bad enough, Chris seemingly told himself to hold his own beer and wrote that when Robbie evolved, he had
released fluids
all over the floor in front of his sisters.
I heard you's a pedophile, nigga. I heard you like little boys and girls, nigga.
I'm not sure if you could auditorily determine that, but that was the sound of me gouging my fucking eyes out. I have no eyes now. They're gone. This issue also closes with the worst third act of anything ever made. It doesn't really have much bearing on the plot, but I'm still gonna talk about it because I had to suffer at the rancid, odious hands of it. So now you do too. Fuck you. Sonichu and Rosechu are going shopping, and since Rosechu
is a woman,
she buys way too much stuff because she's a woman. And then Rosechu walks down the stairs with too much stuff and then has fallen and can't get up and has to be taken to the hospital for unfortunately becoming very small in one panel. Once she gets back, she has a big din-din with her family and seemingly does not take any note that her son has become a... And then she eats the entire dinner that was meant for everyone else and starts to become... pyrocynical. I don't know why. I'm starting to get a feeling of unease while reading this. Rosechu then starts to cry at the fact that she has become increased in diameter. And as she's speaking, Sonichu begins to caress her stomach. I'm not a big fan of what's going on here. I don't like this! I don't like this!
She ate.
Please cease!
I fed her.
Stop!
She was getting bigger.
Wowie.
Stop! The power of Christ compels you!
Oh my god, why? Later, Chris and the girls are sitting around doing nothing until NIGHTSTAR returns for vengeance. Except now he's decided to be good. And literally the next page he decides to be evil again. And they have an epic battle, which ends in the largest word vomit my eyes have ever beholden. Like, what is this? Yeah, there's not really much interesting about this issue, except for this extremely funny panel of his dad Bob getting mad at him for cross-dressing. Christian, you are not a girl. Go put your pants back on. Based.
I fly with you.
Also, Sonichu and Rosechu get married. Yay! And then after that, there's more fat fetish stuff. Cool. Thanks. Around this time, Chris's perception of reality was beginning to corrode more than it ever had been. And that summer, Chris at BronyCon was spotted dancing with someone who wasn't even there. At least to us feeble-minded mortals, not trained in the esoteric arts like Chris. In reality, Chris was, for the first time we know, interacting across the dimensions with C197 to dance with MAGICHAN. We are feeble-minded plebeians for not being able to understand that MAGICHAN was really in this video, even though he clearly is not fucking there. In that exact time, only a month later, in the most opportune moment possible, when Chris's mind was more vulnerable to corruption than ever, a man named Joshua Wise would reach out to Chris with nefarious intent. He would pretend to be the character named John Yamada of Game Industry from the game Hyperdimension Neptunia, which looks really bad, and would inform him that hidden within his Sega Dreamcast was a portal to Quickville, and introduce Chris to several elements of the lore of the game Hyperdimension Neptunia, such as the CPUs, console patron units, which are goddesses of different game consoles. Eventually, Joshua Wise would invite more of his friends to aid him in trolling Chris, forming the Idea Guys. There's a fuck ton of lore with these guys, which is just too much for me to go over in this one video, but basically the gist of it is, the Idea Guys would pretend to be different characters to manipulate Chris into doing a bunch of stupid shit, and make him believe in a bunch of different delusions that he still has to this day. These delusions will manifest into the next few comics, being the most bizarre, deranged, and offensive Chris would ever write. Be warned, this is the point of no return. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Issue 12.9 would serve as the first comic written under the influence of the Idea Guys. It begins with the distant voice of the pony NIGHTSTAR explaining how she possesses psychic powers and can travel throughout the universe. NIGHTSTAR is basically Chris's original Brony character, and she explains how the residents of Dimension C197 are known as the prime versions of these characters, meaning Sonichu, Rosechu, and everyone exist infinitely throughout a multiverse, but there can be only one prime universe, being C197, which pretty much just explains how there can be multiple versions of pre-existing characters without being contradictory, and that she, NIGHTSTAR, exists in a universe nearby that houses Equestria, the land where all the Brony fat shit happens. She explains her origin story, how she was born on the exact same day as Chris, implying that she's her own dimension's version of Chris himself, and that she has magic powers, which allowed her to see through the dimensions, which she used to essentially be a guardian angel for Chris, even though Chris already had MAGICHAN as a guardian angel, and even learned how to talk at a young age but shortly after became a mute, exactly mirroring Chris's life. Chris's rapidly declining mental state starts leaking into the comic when NIGHTSTAR transforms into human form and hops dimensions from the Pony universe to C197 in Quickville, where she meets this yellow character that is really fucking confusing because she's C197's version of NIGHTSTAR, even though NIGHTSTAR is a version of Chris, and there already is a version of Chris in this dimension, so I guess this is like the pony version of the mirrored C197 version of Chris in this dimension? What? It seems to be a reoccurring theme that the boringest Sonichu comic seems to always come before the most interesting one. This issue is just complete madness. It's just madness. At this point, Chris has just officially gone off the deep end and lost his mind. Genuinely mentally insane rather than just being a man-child. This isn't like reading just a terrible webcomic anymore. This is like reading the Necronomicon. This issue is pretty much the culmination of all the Idea Guys' manipulations. And Chris at this point is just the puppet of the Idea Guys now. The summary I'm doing is also extremely condensed because there's an insane amount of stuff going on, and every page is just a massive wall of text. I mean, just look at this. It's barely even a comic anymore. It's just a regular book. The issue begins with a recap of Chris's story about meeting John Yamada, of course being Joshua Trickingham, and learning how to use the portal hidden within his Sega Dreamcast. Chris also explains how peace was made with Count Graduan with the treaty, which in a single sentence resolves the entire conflict of the series. The main villain of the series was defeated in one sentence, and it's not even shown. The entire hour or 2 hours you've been watching this video has culminated in this one sentence. It's over just like that, just instantly, with no payoff, no grand climax. It just ends in one sentence, no picture even, just a sentence, just one. All this effort, all this to one sentence. That's the conclusion to all of this. Every overarching plot has just been a sentence. Chris also explains how history is altered in C197, which displays his terrible grasp of history. He explains how in C197, the US lost the Cold War and Russia takes over America, but it's unclear whether or not the USSR still exists because he draws the Russian flag as the flag of the Russian Federation, and also a few years later would include the invasion of Ukraine in the Sonichu lore, which would imply that Ukraine is no longer part of the Soviet Union, meaning the Soviet Union would no longer exist, but that wouldn't make sense if they won the Cold War, because the Cold War was won when the USSR collapsed. So it wouldn't make sense for Russia to be the Russian Federation but still win if their system collapsed. That inherently makes them the loser. So did America just collapse, like it got taken over, but also Russia? I feel my mind slowly decaying. He also explains how the C197 version of Chris abolished women's rights in Quickville. While this was going down, John Yamada travels through time to return the women's rights that past Chris took away, and he discovers that past Chris has been watching too many Instagram reels and has been indoctrinated into Nazi ideology, and past Chris had given Hitler his Sonichu medallion, making him immortal. But then I guess he realized that was a bad idea, so he took the medallion back and Hitler died, even though Chris literally just said he was immortal. And then John Yamada takes past Chris back to be converted to Islam because he's too lustful. If you can barely tell what the fuck is going on in this, me too. Chris then explains what the chaotic combo have been up to all these years. Angelica becomes a Muslim Satanist, or as I say, a regular Muslim, in this absolutely terrifying panel, and is now a tourist, because I can't say that word on YouTube. Wild grows weed and makes meth. And Punchy now hates fat people. Like half my comments on the first ChrisChan video think I do. And lastly, Rose Shu is transgender now and is the only one that isn't hilarious. You've probably noticed how I describe everything happening as Chris explains how blank, because this isn't really like a narrative where we see action taking place in real time. It's just Chris saying a bunch of stuff already happened, but not like showing it, just saying it happened and then occasionally having an image in his massive pile of text. That being said, Chris explains how Quickville went to war with its neighboring country, Australia-Tina. Australia-Tina takes over half of Quickville territory and then kills the entire Quickville army. Seeing that Quickville has nearly fallen, the Russian forces abandon Quickville. And then seeing that Quickville is defenseless, the Nazis invade it because they're here somehow. During the battle, Sylvana perishes, so Magichan then marries Mewtwo. What? After the Nazis had fully taken control, they execute Simonla. But since nobody can die, because Chris is a man-child who uses this as an escapist fantasy to get away from reality, he Deus Ex Machinas into the lore, an ability for Sonichu to be reborn forever, over and over again, like phoenixes, reviving Sylvana, but not Simonla for some reason. But disturbingly, this revives his father Bob as a Sonichu, which just goes to show how far this is plunged into wish fulfillment fantasy. Seeing how dire the situation was in Quickville, Chris travels to the Brony dimension to speak with the character Discord, who surprisingly enough does not groom Chris, and agrees to help him fight the Nazis. Discord and Chris then travel to Quickville and defeat the invading Nazis, freeing Quickville forevermore. The remaining Nazis flee back to Germany, and Chris infects them with his blood, which turns them into Sonichus, and we get this fantastic panel. Just take a good look at it. Just take it all in. You've been watching this for probably over 2 hours now, and this is what you have to show for it. This. Millions of years of evolution, thousands of wars, conquests, ethnic cleansing, inventors, artists, creators, all of mankind's progress has culminated in this. How does that make you feel? They then have a flashback for some reason where Chris's father Bob goes to California to meet Ted Bundy, and then they go to Quickville to become Sonichus. So now Bundy Chew is a real thing. Chris then speaks about his relationship situation. As of this point, he's married to Magichan, Sylvana, and Mewtwo, and interestingly enough, a future wife known only as 5PB. This would have lasting consequences. And then my favorite part, right before they're all about to get married, literally immediately after writing all this, he adds in a new character that he just made up on the spot to add to his marriage. This character is Chriselle Rosechew, who is 15 years old and is married to Chris now, which is fucked. But in Chris's defense, the idea guys were basically tricking him into marrying a 15-year-old character so they could blackmail him with the threat of people thinking he's a PDF file. So it's fucked, but I think it's more Chris being dumb and gullible rather than actually being a PDF file. If you get what I'm saying, like, it's bad. This is really, really bad, but it's more just Chris being not very smart. And my favorite part about all of this is the payoff to the Love Quest arc. This is where the Love Quest was finally over, in this page. And then in the last act, Chris goes back in time to make the Cold War be won by America and blah, 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 blah. Reading this has given me some of the most mental exhaustion I have ever felt in my entire life. This has taken a lot out of me. In later years, Chris would dub this issue the Idea Guys Corruptions. And in the aftermath, after the Idea Guys were expelled from his life, everyone is telling Chris to ditch everything that happens in this issue because it's fucked. But Chris, for some reason, refused because to this day, he still believes that everything that happened in this, every stupid, offensive thing that happens in this, was real. Issue 14 is basically meant to be part 2 of this fucking madness, but fortunately it's being skipped because all the information gathered from it was used in the opening, and the rest will be explained in a more climactic way in the dimensional merge section of this video, which, speaking of...
This is the end.
The dimensional merge. Chris's reason for existence. The culmination of everything. The end of the world. And like a phoenix from the ashes, the birth of a new world. The birth of Dimension 1C-211987. Chris would first be given a vision of the upcoming apocalypse in October of 2018, and soon after would post his dimensional merge announcements on his YouTube channel. An explanation of his revelation and of what's to come.
The dimensional merge. This dimension right here, 1218, is going to be merged with our sister dimension, C197, where most of our superheroes, supervillains, OCs, and Why have you and other characters have been assisting and co-assisting? Everybody who survives this will get to meet their favorite superheroes among others and everything. But yes, those are going to survive and those are not going to survive.
Chris states that the first signs of the beginning of the merge will be faint occasional glimpses beyond the Iron Curtain. People will start to see Pokemon scurrying around the woods, see Iron Man flying through the sky, and most importantly, he'll be able to peer over the dimensional curtain and be able to see Sneed's feet and seed. Incredible. On the day of the merge's apex, tremors would wreak throughout the world. Great floods, famines, and wildfires would scorch the earth in wake of the coming merge, whose date was January 1st, 2019. Wait, last time I checked, it's 2025 right now, and the world seems pretty not fucking ended. So what happened? The following day, Chris would tweet to the world a status update.
Good New Year, everyone. I shall make my announcement now, and I want no backtalk or hateful commentary. The dimensional merge of C197 and our 1218 is still in progress. There's more damn red tape to work through. Goal is still set. It is only delayed. Everyone is C197 is still very much awake. We have secured our Fury.
What is that word?
In a magic-proof cell a few days ago. Not even that witch's courier on Facebook can say otherwise, because I know better, and in her words, shall never get to or sway me any other way. I still remain the CPU blue heart of the Commodore consoles, Quickfill and Comma, and everyone is safe and well, but for now, I shall delay online talk of the dimensional merge through my social media accounts until further notice. And I still remain very much attached to MAGICHAN, Sonichu, Grizel Rosechu, Sylvana Rosechu, and Mewtwo. There is room for at least one of this dimension, but there is no rush. For now, Happy New Year, everyone.
Lightning heart lightning. The merge was still on. Throughout the following months and years, he would sense the dimensions astrally getting closer and closer, and more signs would clearly be seen. In June of 2019, he would have a good old chit-chat with Jesus. Remember, this is before he started believing that he was Jesus. Who told him that the merge would finalize soon, which apparently meant the merge would happen on New Year's Day of 2021 this time, which then would proceed to not fucking happen, to which Chris proceeded to say that it's gonna happen any day now. Any day now. Any day now. Apparently the merge was so close that Chris made 2 more predictions that failed, making our total 4 failed merge dates. Interestingly, Chris was also possessed by MAGICHAN at the time.
Good day, everyone. It is I, MAGICHAN Sonichu. I have taken possession of Christine's body, as we have swapped bodies.
Where very intriguingly, he referred to Barb as his guilty pleasure waifu, which, speaking of, on August 1st, 2021, Chris was arrested for allegedly copulating with his own mother.
Oh, that's nasty.
Audio tapes of him admitting to the, fornication were then posted online, and he was arrested near immediately after. The event being so catastrophic, it supercharged the merge. And in that moment, the merge truly began. For real this time. Chris, the only man on Earth with true sight, could see the fabric of space and time in both dimensions as rapidly being stitched together into one. The very universe itself was going through a violent rebirth, and ChrisChan was the only one able to see. The merge is here. When he was finally locked away in the damp darkness of jail, without any contact from humanity or the internet, he was able to reflect upon himself. To pass the time in jail, he would read and study his copy of the Bible, which was provided for by the jail. Upon his study, he made many revelations about himself and the nature of the universe. Upon close study, he would realize this whole time that he was Jesus of Nazareth himself, the Son of God. I don't know if I agree with that statement. now going by the name of Jesus Christine Weston Ricardo Chandler, Goddess Blueheart, and after that, said revelation was revelated, an even truer and honester truth than the already true and honest truth he had just received. He realized that the dimensional merge was only the beginning. The true cataclysm was the collective shift. And in that exact moment, the merge was complete, and a prophecy of the collective shift was realized. You see, the merge was the physical space. The dimensions had already merged into one, but the souls in each dimension were still separate. Which to me is just a shitty cop-out for him to keep up with the doomsday prophecy shit while saying that he was right about the merge. And as John of Patmos was given a divine vision of a future cataclysm, so too would the gay internet fat man. Similar to the Book of Revelation, the finale of the merge would take 7 acts to complete. The first being the people of this world suddenly being able to speak in the ancient tongue of Hebrew and Akashic. Next, all of humanity's minds would become injected with all the knowledge stored in the Akashic records. Next, many people will start acting in a Terry A. Davisian schizophrenic manner, which will be interpreted by neurotypicals as insanity, when in reality, they're receiving divine guidance from the other dimension. Fourth, sapient animals would begin to inhabit the earth and speak with humanity. Next, the dreaded 5th step of the merge is where shit goes from regular shitty to that one type of shit that feels like a spiky ball when you try to poop it out. I mean, what? Then, a number of the believers of Chris's new religion, neo-spiritual Christianity, and everyone else he likes will be teleported peacefully to the newly birthing dimension to be merged with the other dimension's counterparts of themselves, leaving in the dust everyone who once wronged him, to slowly be brutally killed in the imploding earth. These people Chris knows as the toxic minority who will not survive. Chris before the merge estimated that 18% of Earth's population was so evil that their souls would be condemned to die in the collapsing dimension, meaning the deaths of 1.4 billion people. Those guaranteed to survive include creative people who have made original characters, people who have a vibrational energy that is in tune with Chris's own vibrational energy, and lastly, people that feed into his delusions on Twitter and give him free stuff. The next phase involves the complete dissolvement of the Iron Curtain. Humanity of 1218 is finally able to see the mythical beings of C-197 and their minds physically filled with divine instructions to await Christ's second coming. And in the last step of the cosmic plan, the last day, Judgment Day, Chris, as Jesus, will descend upon the newly created world at the holy site of 14 Branchland Court, and all of mankind will be judged for their sins by him. And with Chris at command of the new universe, he'll be free to form the world as he sought fit. Create a world without suffering, a world where he was free from debt, a world without any of his financial fears, a world without trolls and people mocking his creations. A world without his loneliness. His true and honest new world. It's finally done! I'm done making the video. I'm done. I'm free. I no longer have to ever make another ChrisChan video.
Yeah.